College football playoff is now set in controversial fashion on Sunday. Michigan, Washington, Texas, and Alabama selected as the best 4 teams in the nation. And that means that 13-0 ACC champions Florida State were left out, alongside the 2-time defending national champions Georgia, who fell completely out. Those 2 occurrences are historic, alongside Bama and an 8 seed jumping all the way into the playoff after championship weekend. All right, this is the last year of the 4-team playoff. Next year we go to the 12-team, so we thought it'd just be fun just to take a look at what a 12-team playoff would look like with the teams this year, now that the final CFP top 25 are out. Now, the top 6 highest-ranked conference champions are 1 through 6. Those top 4 get byes in the first round. 5 through 12 will play off. So you see some of these matchups, and they actually look pretty tasty. Right at the top, Missouri, Oregon looks pretty good. Ole Miss, Georgia be an interesting one. Penn State, Ohio State, Big Ten.
Florida State and Liberty.
Big Ten, yeah, well,
13-0.
I didn't want to say it. Florida State fans are hurting today.
I know they're hurting, but still, this will be your opportunity to prove, even with a backup, we can beat an undefeated Group of 5 team, right?
James Franklin's not happy to see Ohio State again, right?
No.
It stings enough as it is to lose to the Buckeyes in the regular season, if it was in a playoff too. But, I mean, am I crazy to think this ends up with Alabama and Georgia?
I know, and that's what we were talking about. we were talking about, are we just expanding the field to get to the same results all the time?
Is that what stating the SEC is at the top of it? Is that what you're basically saying?
That's all I'm saying. All right, so that's what a 12-team college football playoff bracket would look like. Let's get back to what's actually going to happen, and we're talking about New Year's 6 bowl games. All right, so we start with Missouri and Ohio State. That game, the Cotton Bowl, December 29th in Arlington, Texas. Then we have Ole Miss taking on Penn State in the Peach Bowl. That game at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. Georgia will take on Florida State in the Orange Bowl in Miami. And then Conference USA champions Liberty, the highest-ranked Group of 5, gets a New Year's 6 bowl. They will face 8. Oregon. Lines are not out yet, but I'm assuming that the line for that game is probably going to be pretty slanted towards Oregon. Welcome into our CBS Sports HQ studios for reaction to this. Jeremy St. Louis alongside Brady Quinn and Chip Patterson. We're going to react to the New Year's 6 Bowl, but first we still have more reaction to Florida State being excluded, an historic move by the playoff committee. The ACC issued a statement. Quarterback Jordan Travis issued an apology for not breaking his leg earlier in the season. And now we get a statement from Mike Norvell, the head coach of the Seminoles, who was, you can sense the frustration. Certainly in what he's saying here. I am disgusted and infuriated with the committee's decision today to have what was earned on the field taken away because a small group of people decided they knew better than the results of the games. What is the point of playing games? Do you tell players it's okay to quit if someone goes down? A team that overcame tremendous adversity and found a way to win, doing whatever it took on the field, was cheated today. It's a sad day for college football. I got to come to you guys. I got to get reaction to this. I mean, you guys, we've talked about this already, but I mean, that's strong.
It's not surprising, though, that he would feel this way. I mean, he's coached this team. He's been able to coach this team through a lot of adversity. And I think there is an argument to be made for the fact that you went undefeated through a Power 5 conference. You scheduled a tough non-conference opponent, LSU. You dominated them at the beginning of the year. And even despite not having your starting quarterback, you were able to win the ACC championship and remain undefeated. So there's no doubt an argument to be made for them and the fact that this is a precedent that's now been set by the College Football Playoff Committee. But we kind of had this conversation earlier, Chip, and talking about the fact that you had 5 Power 5 conferences. Right. Let's just say you end up having undefeated champions from all of them. There's only 4 spots. So, you know, the reality is, as much as we want to make the argument that, hey, you win them all, you should be in, it's not always necessarily going to be the case. Now, this year, it should have been the case for Florida State. That's not the direction that the committee wanted to go, and in part because of the quarterback situation. I think anyone who's watched them the past couple of weeks is they're not being judged on the story of the first 10, maybe even 11 games. It's really the past 2 games where I feel like they just didn't show that they were one of the best 4 teams in the eyes of the College Football Playoff Committee.
And that's where cheated is where I'll stop. Like, if you want to be infuriated, if you want to be disgusted, if you want to be upset in the way that life can feel unfair in lots of different manners, but the system was set up to create this musical chairs game where someone is always going to feel like they had accomplished everything that they had set out for when training camp begins. Mike Norvell was named the ACC Coach of the Year. His toughest coaching challenge is what he's got to do with that locker room to get them ready, because they are going to be on a big stage in the Orange Bowl against a quality opponent. And the last thing the Seminoles need is to have the narrative be, see, this is why they weren't in. So Norvell is going to have a big couple weeks to be able to rally this group together.
That's a great point.
All right, so let's dig into the Orange Bowl matchup then versus Georgia. Brady, how does he motivate these players? Because, I mean, now you've done everything you needed to do and you still don't get in. If you're a player and you're in that room, I mean, you're sitting there, what's the point?
It's a great question, and I think for all these players out there, too, who are staring into their opportunity to play on Sundays, that's what's out there for you. And we've seen before players who have played in these exhibition games, that's what they are when you're not playing for the national championship, and they've gotten hurt, and it's unfortunately hit their draft stock, and it's really hit their pockets and what they're able to make in the draft. So it's a big risk. Of course, you can take out insurance policies depending on the position that you play. Sometimes you might want to play because of how it looks if you're going to sit out that game. But when you think about guys like Keon Coleman, who's draft eligible, and Johnny Wilson and Benson in the backfield, and Jared Verse, their outstanding defensive end, what's the incentive to play? And there's obviously a high risk of injury in this. And on the flip side for Georgia, I mean, you've got a relatively young team in some places. Obviously, Carson Beck's going to be there at quarterback. He's not sitting out. And so this could be a disaster for Florida State as far as what this game ends up looking like on the field when it's all said and done, because of how many stars that they have that are going to be moving on to the draft.
Mike Norvell has done a great job of building a roster through the transfer portal, and the hope is eventually he's going to build up with top-notch recruiting out of high school. Do you know who's been recruiting the best players out of high school for the last 4 to 5 years?
Kirby Smart.
Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs. So even if, I mean, what, Kamari Lassiter, Malachi Starks, you know, we can start to Brock Bowers, certainly. There are going to be Georgia players who might choose to protect themselves and not risk anything as well. The issue is that when we go to the backups, especially in this Florida State-Georgia comparison, the backups for Georgia in talent level is just a little bit higher.
Well, and like we saw this year, I mean, we've seen the waves of draft talent that's gone through Georgia in the first round, in particular on defense, to the NFL level, in particular the Philadelphia Eagles. But we've seen this year after year now, winning back-to-back national championships, and then this year they still almost got there.
With a
and it's unbelievable.
Let me ask you this, just thinking out loud here, and just thinking about the emotion that we're seeing from Florida State, the fact that they are so upset that they didn't get in, also the emotion we're seeing from other people that they didn't get in. What are the chances that maybe Florida State says, we don't want to play this game?
No. Yeah.
First off, I think that one hurts your program long-term for the development. You've got a lot of younger players who will get their opportunity to play. These bowl practices, these opportunities really can help springboard you. I remember we played in a bowl game after my coach was fired my sophomore year. Now, one lesson we learned from that, we had to vote as a team whether or not we wanted to go to that bowl game. It wasn't a New Year's Six at that time. And I think a lesson learned based on maybe how serious or lack of any sort of seriousness we took that bowl game, given the circumstances. But I really felt like that was a springboard to help a lot of the younger players on our team develop. You got all those additional practices, real live game reps and experience that led to, back-to-back New Year's Six berths the next 2 years after that because of it.
You've got to flush the pain. You've got to flush the disappointment. You've got to work on building. 15 bowl practices, incredibly important. Also, what would happen if you said no? Then the game comes around, and then you're just reminded. The game that's in Miami, this should be an opportunity to be able to sell the future of Florida State football under Mike Norvell. We suffered a setback here that was not in our hands, not in our control. But you know what we're going to do is we are going to show you that we're going to be back in the national championship conversation next year. Opting out of the bowl, that doesn't send that message.
The Orange Bowl has a tremendous tradition within college football. And on top of that, it's a bowl game that's in your state. It's going to be a nice vacation or event for your fan base, for all involved, for your team with the success you've had this season. These bowl games are a ton of fun to go to for everyone involved. So I would hate to see that if they made that decision, only because the Orange Bowl is one of the best, bar none, out there. And I think it'd be terrible for the players, too, to not be able to share in that experience.
Good trip for Florida State fans to visit Miami.
There you go.
At the time. Yes, all right. Georgia, by the way, won 6 consecutive bowl games going into that one. The Orange Bowl, December 30th in Miami at 4 p.m. Eastern time. All right, let's talk about the Cotton Bowl up next. Missouri taking on Ohio State. Chip, what do you think of this matchup?
This is going to be a fascinating test for Eli Drinkwitz after he did a great job of building this team out, because I did not think that Brady Cook was really going to be able to perform at the level that he did this year. You understood that Luther Burden was an elite talent, but the defense did a great job as well. And they're going to be going up against an Ohio State team that, wants to be able to, they'll be missing some players as well, clearly, but they want to be able to show the next step of development for their quarterback in Kyle McCord. They want to be able to see what the future of the offense is going to be. The skill positions are loaded. And I think that Missouri, the test that they gave Georgia, the test that Missouri gave the best teams on their schedule, showed that they're going to be able to trade paint, especially if Ohio State can't run away and hide.
No doubt. This will be one of the better opponents that Ohio State's faced all season. Outside of Notre Dame, obviously Michigan and Penn State, you'd throw Missouri into that conversation. Very balanced team, a good defense, but really Cody Schrader running the football. Luther Burden makes some big plays down the field. And for a quarterback like Brady Cook, obviously who's draft eligible, you kind of have to say to yourself, these are some of those games that I know there's sometimes guys don't want to risk the injury, but also it's a great opportunity to go up against an Ohio State defense and for all the NFL scouts and talent evaluators to say, this is what I'm capable of doing versus one of the best teams. So for Missouri, I think there's a lot to prove here. And even if they're a draft eligible guy, there's a lot to showcase. On the flip side, when you talk about Ohio State, there's no way Marvin Harrison Jr. plays this game. Come on. He's the best player in the draft. Bar none. And there's no chance that he's going to risk injury playing in this game for the Buckeyes. I don't even know if Emeka Egbuka will. So I'll be curious. The cool thing is for Ohio State, they've recruited so well at that position. That's where you get to see a guy like Carnell Tate, who then comes to the fold, and he can make some big-time plays. This could be his coming-out party to replace what they may lose in Marvin Harrison Jr. So probably not going to see Travion Henderson either. But again, there's a stable of backs there for the Buckeyes that will be playing. And defensively, the Buckeyes have been lights out. So this is a big-time opportunity for them to still kind of showcase after that Michigan loss that this program is still in good shape.
Ohio State 6.5-point favorites as of
They've
today.
struggled versus SEC teams historically to 2-12, something like that?
2-12 says right there in the prompter. 2-12 in bowl games versus the SEC.
Oh, in your prompter. I was like,
December 29th at AT&T Stadium at 8 p.m. Eastern time for that one. All right, Peach Bowl's up next. 11 Ole Miss taking on number 10 Penn State. Brady, looking at the line here for this one, it is 2.5 to Penn State with a total of 47.5.
Yeah, it's such an interesting line only because I think this is based on Penn State's defense and maybe some of the offensive improvements too, as we've seen what they make the change at offensive play call, finding Mike Yursich. And you started to see a little bit more of the down the field throwing for Drew Aller. And Drew's going to be playing. He's not going to be sitting out for this one. Jackson Dart's a quarterback that he could use this sort of game against one of the best defenses in college football with a lot of pressure from Manny Diaz. But will Chop Robinson be playing in it? Adisa Isaac, there's a number of guys. Kalen King, all these draft-eligible players that they got in this very talented defense. I don't know, but the reality is this is a Penn State team that I think is where they can run the football with Singleton and Katron Allen, both those guys, again, not draft eligible, so they'll be playing in this one. I would imagine that it's not going to be a track meet, but I think it's going to be a higher scoring game.
I was just about to go there. Penn State will have to score points. Penn State will have to show some explosiveness in ways that they didn't against their toughest opponents, because even if Jackson Dart, for some reason, doesn't play, I trust Lane Kiffin. You got Walker Howard in that quarterback room. You got Spencer Sanders in that quarterback room. I trust him to be able to set up an offense that's going to make things difficult for Penn State. And so I think as a Nittany Lions fan, you're going into this hoping to see maybe a little bit of the mentality of what it's going to look like. Because Drew Aller, if Penn State wants to win the games that they really, really want to win, he's got to take a step this offseason. Maybe this bowl game would be an opportunity for that.
What do you think for James Franklin, too? I know he struggled versus Ohio State and Michigan, but the bowl game conversation, too, has a little bit been a part of that. You kind of get that sour taste out of your mouth, losing both those games again this season if you can win one like this, right?
100%, because it's an SEC win.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true.
Ninth New Year's Six Bowl under James Franklin, second New Year's Six Bowl under Lane Kiffin for Ole Miss. That game December 30th at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. Kickoff at noon Eastern time. Let's wrap it up with the Fiesta Bowl. Highest ranked Group of 5 champion gets the New Year's Six spot. That is, of course, 23 Liberty versus Oregon. Chip, the line here, 13.5. Do you think the line right now is a reflection of the fact that we're not going to see Bo Nix in this game?
Yes, because if Bo Nix is playing in this game, this thing is be a lot higher. We'd be talking about 19.5 or 20. What Jamie Chadwell has done with Liberty is going to run Conference USA for as long as he's there. He is going to be able to continually get quarterbacks from the transfer portal, put them in his system, and he's going to be able to outscore opponents the same way he did all the way to 13-0. Found it interesting. The committee had Liberty at 23, SMU at 24.
Yeah.
That was a very big decision, one spot away. But I think about Caden Salter and what he was able to do this year. And, depending on what we see from Oregon in terms of what Dan Lanning is able to do to get the Ducks at their top level. And it's going to be tough. I mean, we talk about coaching challenges. To get Oregon to be playing in that death metal, super aggressive kind of mindset when you are a 2-touchdown favorite, Liberty could put a scare in them for sure.
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, they can score points. Caden Salter is phenomenal when you look at what he can do throwing the football, running the football as well, especially with Cooley in the backfield providing that balance. It's a different level of talent when you're looking at the type of ability that Oregon has to create big plays, to get pressure, get turnovers. This will be a lopsided game if Dan Lanning has his team ready to go. But I don't know that I'd bet against Jamie Chadwell in this one. The way he's coached that team up, you never say never. So it's going to be fun to see. I'm also curious, though, when you get a bowl game like this, where Oregon, who was on the cusp of, I think if they won the Pac-12, they would have been a part of the college football playoff. How do they respond to that disappointment? And also being in a place that is a lot of fun. And it's a place that you've been to before because you're obviously playing some of your conference opponents. So it's not going to be foreign territory when they're spending a week out there having some fun around this game. So hopefully they take it seriously and they show what they're capable of.
Yeah, 5th bowl game appearance in program history for Liberty. January 1st, as Brady mentioned, in Glendale, Arizona, a place that Oregon's certainly familiar with. 1 p.m. Eastern time. Thank you very much, Brady Quinn, Chip Patterson joining us here to react to the New Year's Six Bowl. And speaking of college chatter,